so let's move on with another message. This is very important again. So let's all welcome the MILN chairman, Alhaj Murad Ebrahim. Let's give him a big, big hand for his welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi wa bihi nasta'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning to everyone. My courtesy to everyone here, leaders of the different churches, leaders of the Muslim community, leaders of the Moro National Liberation Front, my colleague in the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, and the government officials also who are here. Sorry to not to mention any more names because I will be doing maybe injustice to others whom I cannot mention. So at any rate, would like to express our deep appreciation for being here today, joining this very important gathering. I feel very privileged to join on this timely conduct of Moro-Christian Leaders Dialogue for Peace. More than this, I am elated that we are coming together to discuss what used to divide us in the past. That of the Bangsamoro question and its consequent quest for truth, justice, freedom, and our common search for peace. We know that for centuries we have been struggling in order that we can have genuine, lasting peace in our homeland. We have suffered so much during the past decades, starting in the late 70s, late 60s, going through the 70s, and then the 80s until the 90s, this 19th. Actually, we are aware that before the late 60s, here in Mindanao, we were all living together in a very harmonious relationship. Both Christians, Muslims, and the indigenous people, we were all together living in the same community. In fact, for us, we were during our childhood, we were in the areas where majority are Christian population. Just to set an example is even our camp now, Camp Darapanan, our administrative camp in Sultan Kudarat. Before the war in the early 70s, Camp Darapanan was populated by majority Christian. Cebuanos and Ilonggos populated the area. We were minority in the area, but we were living together in the community as the same people, not distinguished by religion. We are friends, we go together to school, and in all our activities, we were together. And this is also happening in many areas where Muslims and Christians are together. But then, it's unfortunate that this tranquility, this peace we are enjoying at that time was suddenly shattered starting in the late 60s when the so-called resurgence of an extremist group, the so-called Ilaga movement, allegedly Christian group, who engaged in a massacres in the Muslim communities, particularly in North Cotabato. Among this was the Manili massacre in 1969, where more than 100 children, women, old people were massacred, and then followed by different incidents of massacres in other areas. And this situation worsened when in early 70s, 1972, the Philippine government, under the leadership of President Marcos, declared martial law in 1972. The declaration of martial law did not at all help in quelling the conflict that is just beginning, but it worsened the situation. And that was the time when the Moro people have no other choice except to fully organize themselves, and that was the birth of the Moro National Liberation Front. So this started all the sacrifices we have been passing through during the several decades of war and conflict. Although, if you look at the formation of the Moro National Liberation Front, it never stated about religion. It never include in its agenda the issue of religion, because it is a political organization aimed at defending and preserving the Bangsamoro people as a people. So, although in some instances it's unfortunate that people were equating the conflict in Mindanao before as a religious conflict between Christians and Muslims. It was never a religious conflict. The only incident that started which made it we created that impression is when that start of the conflict in the late 60s were started by so-called Christian fanatic groups and claiming to be Christians, but I do not know if you agree that they are real Christians. So now we know that everybody we have suffered so much for several decades. We have endured so much sacrifices, not only us who struggled, who fought the government since the early 70s, but also those who were in the affected area. So now we are happy that at least we are seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. We hope that this light will really come bright and true and will really light us in the future. I am happy to I think many of you here are aware that prior to the colonialism, we were one people that belonged to the Greek Malay race that inhabited the archipelago, even before it was named by the Spaniard in honor of their king, King Philip of Spain. This is why you find that many of your ancestors that resisted the Spanish colonizations in the north and the central part of this country bear similar names with us, such as Raja Sulaiman, Lakandula, and Lapu-Lapu. You know, what His Eminence, the Cardinal, was saying about the biases and prejudice. Although it disappeared sometimes in our midst, but actually these biases and prejudice started during the colonial period. You know that when the Spaniard came to conquered part of the people in the archipelago, when they managed to convert, to let them embrace their religion, Christianity, then the Moro people continued to affirm their original faith of Islam. Then this religion was already used by the colonizers in order to divide us as people. We were one people before, but after we were colonized, some submitted to the religion of the colonizers, some opposed to it, and then that divided us, starting to divide us. And that is the reason why, from the colonial periods, we already inherited those biases and prejudice between the Muslims and the Christian population. And these prejudice and biases is still prevalent in us up to now. To be realistic, it is still very prevalent up to now with us. You know, even during the process of this the passage of the law, our sister here in the Congress, by Sandra, is witness to the very strong prejudice against the Bangsamoro people, and that give a very strong challenge against the BOI, the passage of the law, because we really feel that because of this prejudice, even the lawmakers have their own mistrust against the Bangsamoro people. And they are afraid to give an essence of power in the BOL, because they are afraid that it might be used by the Bangsamoro people to for whatever purpose, which is not against the Filipino people or against the country. I think you have noticed that when the black grant was being discussed, some senators were asking whether is that black grant will not be used by the MILF to buy weapons. So that is one manifestation that they really there is really that mistrust against him, and that is why there is very strong opposition to giving political power to the autonomous government because of that mistrust of that this will become an instrument for us to secede from the country. So these were the challenges we have been meeting in the peace process, and this is also the reason maybe why the peace process took very long. You know, the peace process started in 1975. After when the Organization of Islamic Cooperation Conference at that time intervened in 1974, when they passed a resolution regarding the situation in South Philippines. Then that started the intervention of the OIC, and the negotiation started in 1975. So from 1975, we started negotiating in the name of the MNLF. And then 1976, we were able to forge an agreement, the landmark Tripoli Peace Agreement of 1976. This landmark agreement was celebrated by the entire Bangsamoro people, because it is the first time that the Bangsamoro people was recognized as a people, and the first time that the government accepted the grant of a self-governance for the Bangsamoro people, which they have been struggling for since the start of the struggle. So everybody celebrated the 1976 peace agreement. Unfortunately, this celebration was turned to frustration when the Philippine government under Marcos implemented not the agreement, but its own version of the agreement. So they practically threw up the entire provisions of the agreement and implemented a so-called autonomous government, which is not at all provided in the peace agreement. So that frustration again turned into the war again, the return to hostilities. after the ceasefire was reached in 1976. Then there was again, after the changes in the administration of the Philippine government, President Corazon Aquino came into power after Marcos, and then he started again to revive the peace process, and then this was not very successful. It was inherited by President Ramos, and then there was the negotiation during the time of President Ramos, which again have produced the 1996 peace agreement signed in Jakarta by the MNLF and the Philippine government. So, at the time, we were already in two different organizations, the MILF and the MNLF. But during the negotiation of the MNLF in the 1996 peace agreement, our stand at the time was a wait and see attitude, meaning if it will be successful, then we do not need to join the negotiation, but we will join with the implementation of the result of the negotiation. But then again, unfortunately, this 1996 peace agreement was not faithfully implemented. It was not faithfully implemented. So, at the time, we were thinking that maybe the government every government is just want to sign an agreement, but they don't want to implement that agreement. Because always it goes with the implementation. There is a very good agreement. Since 1976, there was a very good agreement. 1996 also is a very good agreement. Although they have inserted some provisions there which will turn it into another interpretation. So, now, we continued our negotiation. We started our negotiation in the MILF in 1997 after seeing the failure of the 1996 peace agreement. So, from 1997, we have struggled so much in the negotiation. There was an off and on negotiation. There was negotiation in the table, and then there was fighting in the ground. Until in 2000, when the president was President Estrada, he declared all-out war against the MILF, and that shattered again the peace process, because he declared this all-out war at the midst of the negotiation. In fact, when he declared war, the armed forces of the Philippines started attacking our Camp Abubakar, 3 o'clock in the early morning. And that day, at 12 o'clock, the peace panel signed an agreement. They both signed an agreement in agreeing to pacify the situation, because there was some problem in the peace, in the ceasefire. But we were surprised that the agreement was signed at 12 o'clock, and 3 o'clock the armed forces of the Philippines attacked our main camp, Camp Abubakar. So that started the fighting again, and then a few days later, Estrada declared all-out war. So everything was shattered again in the peace process. So the peace process was continued only after the Estrada was deposed by People's Power, and in 2000, and so 2001, another president, President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, took over, and that revived the negotiation in 2001 with the facilitation of Malaysia, because the government requested Malaysia to facilitate. So this, after a series of so many ups and downs in the peace process, we finally reached an agreement in 2014. First was the framework agreement, and then the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro. And then after that, we started again with the implementation process. And we noticed that the same situation arises. We are confronted with very strong challenge against the implementation of the agreement. Because although the agreement will make it sure that the agreement will really translate the aspiration of the Bangsamoro people, and then protect also the interests of the Filipino people and the country, the entire country. But yet, there was so many prejudices and biases against the agreement, and that make it very difficult to implement. And that is why, during the time of President Aquino, despite he have manifested his sincerity to really implement the law, the BBL, but unfortunately, until his term ended, he did not succeed. The law was not passed, and then now, almost after the peace, after that, we see that the hope of the people turn into frustration, and that is creating again another situation. And if you look at what is happening now, what happened, all these small groups which are branded as extremists, like the Abu Sayyaf, the BIFF, then lately the Mountie group. All this group came at a time when the frustration against the peace process was very high. You know, the Abu Sayyaf came up after the non-implementation of the 1996 peace agreement. Then the BIFF came during the time when in the negotiation of the MILF, the MOA AD was declared, the MOA AD was not signed despite it was already initial, and everybody was in Kuala Lumpur already gathered to sign the agreement. After that, it was not agreed because the Supreme Court issued TOR, so it was not signed, and then after that, it was declared as unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. So, that after that incident, when we go back to negotiation, then the BIFF declared their own group. They say we lost hope in the negotiation. We will no longer join you in negotiating. You negotiate, and then we continue fighting with the government. And that created the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters. And the last one is this multi-group also came after the failure of the BBL during the Aquino administration. So they started to organize themselves and then have their own another group. So we will see that all of these are still anchored on the biases and mistrust between us, Filipino, all Filipino. So I think this is the big challenge we will be facing. To us, we admitted that what we have achieved now, at least the law is passed, but the implementation process will still be very challenging for us. And that is why, for me, I have always been calling everybody because we feel that there is still that misconception that this BOL, this Bangsamoro government, will be dominated by the MILF, will always be for working for the MILF and not for the entire people. So there has been always this misconception. So that is where we are now, and I am happy today that we are gathered here. Different sects who are here, and we hope that we will have more of this in order that we can really understand very clearly each other. As I have said, which was repeated by His Eminence, that what we intend now is to build a government not for the MILF, not for the Bangsamoro people alone, but for everybody. We can assure you that aside from the provision of the law, that we have to be inclusive, then we intend to be, during the transition period, we intend to be leaders not only of the MILF, not only of the Bangsamoro people, but leaders of all the people in the area, despite of what they are, their affiliations. We are leaders of the government for all people in the area, and that we will try very much in order to manifest that principle during the transition period. Actually, if you look at the provisions of the agreement, the MILF will only be during the transition period. After the transition period, there will be free election. And the free election will be for everybody. It's not only for the MILF. Everybody can run for position in the Bangsamoro government. Everybody can run for, can have their own political party to contest after the transition authority. Our only rule during the transition authority is to at least to implant what we have agreed with the Philippine government in the agreement we had with the Philippine government. After this, then it is all open for everybody. So there is no reason to be, for me, there is no reason to be apprehensive. There is no reason to be that we will be monopolizing the leadership of the of the next government, because it will always be, this will be under a democratic process, and we have agreed, we have now accepted to ourselves that from the hard struggle, from the armed struggle we had, and from the struggle in the negotiation, we will now be in a democratic struggle. We may opt for join the struggle during the democratic process, but it does not mean that it will be monopolized by us, but it will be for everybody. So we pray that this gathering we have now will finally be fruitful, and will start more dialogue, more process in order to be united together. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.